Hi, I'm Summer Tothill and I'm a feminist influencer, educator and writer. And every week on my Instagram, I run a Q&A with my followers. They ask me their questions about how gender equality and oppression is affecting them in their world, and I answer. What you're about to watch or listen to is a compilation of 1 week's worth of those questions and answers. If you join me on Instagram every week, you can take part in the Q&A, ask your own questions, get your answers, get involved. How to let go of shame for being promiscuous in the past. Firstly, thank you for submitting this question. I suspect this is something that a lot of women deal with, and I'm so glad that you asked. Firstly, I just want to say, do you think that there is a man in the entire history of humankind who has been referred to as promiscuous, has been referred to as a slut? We have words for men who have a lot of sex, and they are overwhelmingly positive or sort of jokey. There's fuckboy, there's stud. No amount of sex that men have is enough for us to apportion shame onto them. What does promiscuity even mean? How much sex is the right amount of sex to have? What kind of sex is the right kind of sex to have? How much sex is too much sex? How much sex is enough? How many sexual partners is too many? And does that change whether you're a man or a woman or a non-binary person? Does it change related to your age? I would say yes, all of these things have a social framework that is entirely constructed and based in a heteropatriarchal, misogynistic framework where we assign value of who's having sex and how much and with whom, when these things are entirely arbitrary. Now, you've described yourself as promiscuous, which I suspect is a way to use a more neutral term than something negative like slut. But even so, what does promiscuous even mean? What kind of sex and how much and with whom would have been the right way to do it? There is no right amount of sex to have, no right number of sexual partners or wrong number of sexual partners. The only person who gets to determine the value of those things is you. And even then, you're not determining your value in a vacuum. You're determining your body count, as people put it, which seems kind of violent, against being steeped in a misogynistic patriarchal culture. The idea of promiscuity only really applies to women because patriarchy has put a lot of effort into controlling women's sexual activity, their sex drive, their reproductive output, their reproductive activities, as a way to yoke them into the family home environment and to serve patriarchy and to make sure that we are putting men's and the patriarchy's needs first always. So obviously patriarchal conditioning is one source of shame around women's sexual activity. But I want to examine something else with you, which is the source of that shame. And if there is a possibility that some of your shame comes from actually being traumatized by some of the things that men chose to do to you in your past in sexual encounters. Is it possible that the shame comes internally for blaming yourself from times when you actually would have preferred not to have had a sexual encounter, but you were coerced or pressured or felt otherwise like you had to go through it? A lot of women go through periods when we're young, especially, where a lot of the sex that we're having is a bit grey area consent-wise, if not straight up non-consensual. A lot of women of my generation who were branded sluts when they were teens in high school could look back now and tell you that what was actually happening was that they were getting raped while they were drunk at parties. And yet they carry the shame. So whether you've had a lot of sexual partners or only a few, you have nothing to be ashamed of, unless you've sexually assaulted someone. And let's be real, lots of men have sexually assaulted someone and they're not ashamed of it. Hell, they probably don't even look back and think or know that they did. So whether it's about sexual history or any other matter, when women are being encouraged to judge and shame ourselves, I like to apply to myself the same level of moral laxity and forgiveness that the most dodgy, mediocre, straight white man is afforded. They are allowed to get away with everything. They do not have to behave perfectly. They still get to succeed in life, and you can absolutely guarantee that they do not go to bed at night and lay awake feeling shame about all of the sex that they had when they were younger. So if you do have some sexual trauma to work through, I highly recommend getting some therapy for that. But if you don't, I highly recommend just reflecting on all the great sex you had when you were younger and feeling grateful that you had that opportunity.
Should we just give up on dating men altogether?
I get this question every week. In fact, I got it twice this week, and I can understand why. We want to be in love. We want to have romantic relationships. I love being in love. I am in love. I have a boyfriend, and yet I have to square that off with the fact that when women are dating men, we are dating our oppressor. And it is so hard to see the truth of what masculinity is, how patriarchy works, and how misogyny is at play in just about every interaction we have with men, and try to balance that against the fact that if you're a straight woman, the only people you're ever going to want to be in romantic relationships with are men. Plus, we want to have sex with men and not feel like we're giving away a part of our souls when we do that. That's probably why someone wrote a book a couple of years ago called How to Date Men When You Hate Men. How do you not go crazy dating straight men when you're completely aware of how the patriarchy and misogyny work? I've got 3 tips for you. The first one is to practice decentering men from your life. This is a term that was coined by Charlie's Toolbox, and it means not revolving your life decision and your future plans and even your opinions and the way you dress and behave around what men think and having a romantic relationship with men. If you practice that, it becomes much easier to sort through the crap when you're dating them. The second one is to get good at drawing very strong boundaries. And the third one is to be proactive at withdrawing your attention and services and walking away at the first sign of bad behavior. Cishet men aren't actually offering enough to women's lives for us to put up with any kind of bad behavior from them. So if you're going to be out there on the dating scene, practice being absolutely ruthless in sorting the wheat from the chaff. I really want to stress that giving up on dating men is a perfectly fine and valid life choice, and in many circumstances it will lead to your life being better. You don't have to date men. You don't have to be in the dating market. Nobody has to be pursuing romantic interests if they would prefer to be single, and if their life would be better off being single. It serves the patriarchy to convince women that we need to be in romantic relationships with men because what that necessarily entails is serving men. And romantic relationships do require you to give of yourself. And if you don't want to give of yourself to men, because let's face it, most straight men don't deserve it, then you don't have to.
How do I stop relying on the male gaze for validation?
Morgues literally prefer to hire women than men because men can't be trusted with the cadavers. And I'm sorry to always be the one saying this, but if a man is sexually attracted to you, that does not say anything about you as a person. It does not validate you. It is absolutely no commentary on your worth or even, unfortunately, your attractiveness in general or to that specific man. Sometimes men will fuck a person they don't think is hot just for the shits and giggles. Men are also not smarter, not funnier, and not more competent than women, so their opinion on things is not more valuable either. Judge yourself by your own metrics.
How to reconcile being in feminine energy but also being strong and independent?
To answer that question, let me ask you a few questions. Why are strength and independence being positioned as in opposition to femininity in the question to begin with? Is there a possibility that femininity, just like masculinity, is a socially constructed concept that is not innate within you? Is it possible that feminine energy isn't a real thing and that the concept of femininity was invented by the patriarchy to oppress you? Is it possible that what you believe is femininity is simply a set of traits and expectations constructed by the patriarchy and deliberately ascribed to women in order to make it easier to exploit and dismiss them? Think about what femininity is supposed to mean, right? Modern femininity, as we understand it, encompasses traits like nurturing, subservience, selflessness, emotionality, chasteness. I made the distinction between modern femininity because historically there have been periods when women were considered to be innately unchaste, and now we are considered to be innately more chaste. It's almost like it's all fucking arbitrary based on what's convenient to the patriarchy at the time. Like, isn't it convenient that all those traits result in women getting yoked to domestic and caring labour while being perceived as irrational operators who can't handle money or be trusted with power? Girl math. If you consider yourself a woman or female or femme, you get to decide what femininity is for you and express it in the way that gets you what you need and what you want. And for the love of God, don't let it stop you from being strong or independent. That's how the patriarchy gets us.
That's it for this Q&A. Thank you so much for listening. Do you love exclusive content that's just for you and to sticky beak inside other people's lives? If so, please consider subscribing to my Instagram. Your subscription to my Instagram is less than $5 a month, and that gets you guaranteed answers in the weekly Q&A, which is absolutely not the case for non-subscribers. It also gets you subscriber-only content and a peek inside my life. I do not share on my public Instagram really anything about my personal life, but subscribers get a peek under the hood how I live, laugh, lol in a feminist way. But personally, my favorite thing is the guaranteed answers in the Q&As. I love being able to tell my subscribers that any question they ask me every week will absolutely get answered. So go to my Instagram and hit the subscribe button. Find me on Instagram at summertothill, that's summer with an O, spelt the same way as you see in this YouTube channel. I can't wait to see you there.